It's time for the Parent Memoirs.
Sounds good.
Sweet.
Okay. Fingers crossed we finally have figured this out.
Yes.
So, welcome to another episode of the Parent Memoirs. I'm Lara Mack.
I'm Jessica James.
Okay, so you had a story about
Yes.
Liam that you wanted to share.
Yes. It's quite funny for, a 5-year-old little boy story.
Yes.
So, for reasons that we probably don't really need to go into for his own, sanity as an adult, we have to put some medicine on his little man parts right now.
Gotcha.
And we have to do it twice a day, in the morning and the evening, whatever. And or he lays on my bed, and we were getting ready to put his medicine on him, and he's got his little naked butt hanging out, and he pulls his legs behind his head as much as he can, and then he points down to his testicles, and he says, "Why don't you put it on my uvula?" I was like, "What are you talking about? Your uvula's in your mouth." And he was like, "No, I pee out of my uvula. My uvula's down there." And I was like, honey, those are your testicles, first of all. You don't pee out of your testicles. And your uvula is in the back of your mouth. You're talking about your urethra, but that's still not in your testicles. That's at the tip of your penis. And so I showed him, where his urethra was. And I was like, I don't understand how you're a boy. You pee several times a day, and how is it that you don't understand where your pee comes from? It doesn't come from your testicles. He's like, well, no, it comes from my uvula. And I'm like, no, it's not a uvula. That's in your mouth. You don't pee out of your mouth.
Oh God! I think there's a cartoon movie that George and I saw when we first started dating. I think it's called Monster House.
Okay.
And it's like 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl that somehow get trapped in this house that's haunted or has been taken over. The house is turned into a monster somehow, I think.
Yep.
And they get to the point where they see the house has a uvula, right?
Yeah.
So I believe the girl says, "Oh, it's uvula." And one of the little boys go, "Oh, so it's a girl."
Yes, you're right. That does.
And I remember George and I just pissed ourselves laughing. We were like, and she was like, "No, that doesn't mean it's a girl."
Yep. I forgot about that part. Yeah, that's one of the kids' favorite movies to watch at a Halloween time. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I was saying it to the right person. "Oh, it's a girl."
It's a girl. Like, no,
Nope.
That's not how that works.
That would be a negative Ghost Rider.
Amelia, we were driving in the car the other day, and she started asking me about why boys don't have babies. And it was really of an interesting conversation because I wasn't sure, okay, how do I explain it without going like full in to this conversation right now?
Yeah.
And I basically just ended up telling her, I was like, boys are just missing the necessary parts, honey. That's all that matters.
That's all you need to know.
She was satisfied with that.
They don't have the necessary plumbing.
Right.
We'll just say that.
Yeah. And she was looking at me like she didn't really buy it, but she stopped talking. So I was satisfied for the time being.
You're really sweet. Jessica had this rather brilliant idea that I have very much enjoyed. So why don't you share with our fabulous listeners what the idea was? Or what it was you found, I guess.
So we've been cleaning out my mother's storage unit because she's on her way to pursuing her dreams of traveling the world. And so we're cleaning out her storage unit, and she came across a book in there, which is Politically Correct Bedtime Stories by James Finn Garner. And it's Modern Tales for Our Life and Times. And I just thought that these stories were very hilarious. And so we are going to start today with Little Red Riding Hood. But before I get into it, I'm just going to read a quick little bit of the introduction just so that everyone understands where this author is trying to come from in these stories. And I think it just really reflects our society of today. All right. So in the introduction, the author states, if through omission or commission I have inadvertently displayed any sexist, racist, culturalist, nationalist, regionalist, ageist, lookist, ableist, sizist, speciest, intellectualist, socioeconomicist, ethnocentrist, phallocentrist, heteropatriarchalist, or type of bias as yet unnamed, I apologize and encourage your suggestions for rectification, and in the quest to develop meaningful literature that is totally free from bias and purged from the influences of its flawed cultural past, I doubtless have made some mistakes. Some of those in there, man, those are hard to say.
Yeah, you did
Yes.
good.
Thanks. All right, so we're going to start with Little Red Riding Hood. And it's not very long, so it'll go quick.
Okay.
Before I get into this, women, this author, he doesn't spell it W-O-M-E-N. He spells it W-O-M-Y-N. So that way the word women doesn't have the word men in it. Like, that's the extent that this author is going to here just to make everybody happy.
There you go. There
All right,
you go.
Little Red Riding Hood. There once was a young person named Red Riding Hood who lived with her mother on the edge of a large wood. One day, her mother asked her to take a basket of fresh fruit and mineral water to her grandmother's house. Not because this was women's work, mind you, but because the deed was generous and helped engender a feeling of community. Furthermore, her grandmother was not sick, but rather was in full physical and mental health and was fully capable of taking care of herself as a mature adult. So, Red Riding Hood set off with her basket through the woods. Many people believed that the forest was a foreboding and dangerous place and never set foot in it. Red Riding Hood, however, was confident enough in her own budding sexuality that such obvious Freudian imagery did not intimidate her. On the way to Grandma's house, Red Riding Hood was accosted by a wolf, who asked her what was in her basket. She replied, "Some healthful snacks for my grandmother who is currently capable of taking care of herself as a mature adult." The wolf said, "You know, my dear, it isn't safe for a little girl to walk through these woods alone." Red Riding Hood said, "I find your remark sexist and offensive in the extreme, but I will ignore it because of your traditional status as an outcast from society, the stress of which has caused you to develop your own entirely valid worldview. Now, if you'll excuse me, I must be on my way." Red Riding Hood walked on alone the main path, but because his status outside society had freed him from slavish adherence to linear, Western-style thought, the wolf knew a quicker route to Grandma's house. He burst into the house and ate Grandma, an entirely valid course of action for a carnivore such as himself. Then, unhampered by rigid, traditionalist notions of what masculine or feminine, he put on Grandma's nightclothes and crawled into bed. Red Riding Hood entered the cottage and said, "Grandma, I have brought you some fat-free, sodium-free snacks to salute you in your role of a wise and nurturing matriarch." From the bed, the wolf said softly, "Come closer, child, so that I might see you." Red Riding Hood said, "Oh, I forgot. You are as optically challenged as a bat, Grandma. What big eyes you have." "They have seen much and forgiven much, my dear." "Grandma, what a big nose you have, only relatively, of course, and certainly attractive in its own way." "It has smelled much and forgiven much, my dear." "Grandma, what big teeth you have." The wolf said, "I am happy with who I am and what I am," and leaped out of bed. He grabbed Red Riding Hood in his claws, intent on devouring her. Red Riding Hood screamed, not out of alarm at the wolf's apparent tendency towards cross-dressing, but because of his willful invasion of her personal space. Her screams were heard by a passing woodchopper person, or log-field technician as he preferred to be called. When he burst into the cottage, he saw melee and tried to intervene. But as he raised his axe, Red Riding Hood and the wolf both stopped. "And just what do you think you're doing?" asked Red Riding Hood. The woodchopper person blinked and tried to answer, but no words came to him. bursting in here like a Neanderthal, trusting your weapon to do your thinking for you, she exclaimed. Sexist! Speciest! How dare you assume that women and wolves can't solve their own problems without a man's help? When she heard Red Riding Hood's impassioned speech, Grandma jumped out of the wolf's mouth, seized the woodchopper person's axe, and cut his head off. After this ordeal, Red Riding Hood, Grandma, and the wolf felt a certain commonality of purpose. They decided to set up an alternative household based on mutual respect and cooperation, and they lived together in the woods, happily ever after. The end. I love it. It's just such a good story.
It is a good story.
Yes,
I love it.
Yes.
But those are
Yes.
entertaining, and we need to do that. So every episode, we're going to have Jessica's reading corner.
Yes, and next week we will do the 3 codependent goats gruff.
The 3 codependent goats gruff. I love it.
Yes.
All
It's gonna
right.
be exciting.
So make sure to come back next week for that. I'm excited.
Me too.
All right. So we'll go ahead and wrap this up. If you guys have stories, suggestions, whatever, send them to theparentmemoirs@yahoo.com. So until next time, I'm Laura Mack.
I'm Jessica James.
Love your faces.
Keep it sane.
Hey, Parent Peeps. Make sure to subscribe on iTunes or on your favorite podcasting platform. Stay strong, mommies and daddies. Love your faces.